We're going in depth this Tuesday on a court case involving a convicted police killer. Dontae Morris was sentenced to death for the murders of 2 Tampa police officers following a traffic stop in 2010. Well, now Morris is on another trial for another murder. Police say Morris ambushed Derrick Anderson at his doorstep when he came from doing his laundry the same year, apparently because Anderson had argued with him earlier in the day. Well, now the prosecution is considering whether to show jurors dash cam video of the Tampa police shooting as part of the Anderson murder case. The defense, of course, not on board with that idea. Joining me right now is Karen Fultz, a professor at the Cooley Law School. Professor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Okay,
let me start out with the first question. This is the 3rd attempt to try to seat a jury in this Dontae Morris trial. How many times do you try before you finally say, we got to move it?
Well, from the prosecution's perspective, you want to make sure that you have all of the evidence and the witnesses in line before you move forward, especially of a case of this magnitude. You want to make sure that you can prosecute it and provide the jury with the information that they need to fairly weigh the evidence, because the prosecution has the burden in this case. And from the defense side, you also don't want to prejudice the defendant because they have constitutional rights to a speedy trial.
Now, I'm going to ask this first before we get into this discussion, because you always hear people say this when you're dealing with people that are multiple killers. Dontae Morris already sentenced to death for the murders of the 2 Tampa police officers. You go almost say, well, why are we doing this? You can't kill him twice. You can't kill him 3 times.
Because if you charge someone with multiple counts and for different crimes, each time that you charge them for a crime, provides that you have a right to face your witnesses, and you have a right for the prosecution to meet their burden beyond a reasonable doubt to present the evidence that they claim will prove that you are guilty for the crimes that they allege you've committed. So anyone that's been charged, you have a right to be innocent until proven guilty.
Now let's talk about this case specifically, and I know there's no easy answer on that, and yes, we do want everybody to have a fair trial. It's just one of those things that sometimes when you're dealing with multiple killers, it just aggravates folks. But let's talk about this killing with Derrick Anderson. Now the big thing on this is that they're talking about is that we know during the first trial, or actually the second trial of the 2 Tampa police officers, there was a video that showed the shooting. And from everybody that we had talked to, that we didn't see it, the media didn't see it. I don't think, hopefully, the public will never see it because of its graphic nature. Why is this a big deal now in the trial, the Derrick Anderson trial, that he was shot and killed allegedly by Dontae Morris? Why show that tape? And do you think that they will?
Well, first, why, right? So the prosecution is pushing for this because once someone is committed of a crime and you have the opportunity to try them for a different crime, and that evidence will prove motive, not necessarily go to whether or not that they are acting in accordance with the prior conduct, but there are exceptions. And in Florida, as in many jurisdictions, all of that is governed by the rules of evidence. We as attorneys, once we try cases, the rule of evidence will govern what evidence comes in and what evidence will not come in. And in this case, for conduct that goes to your character, for prior crimes, it can only come in to establish motive, opportunity, or other exceptions that are outlined by the rule. And for this case, I'm not sure how the judge would rule because of the prejudicial nature, which is more than likely what the defense is arguing, to keep that evidence out. One sees that. One could possibly conclude that he had some motive or an opportunity to shoot that individual, and that's why the prosecution wants that into evidence, and that's why the defense wants to keep it out.
Now, there's been some talk that not only because they shot him, now you said, I don't know whether this applies or not, because apparently they are going to argue that he shot him, Dontae Morris shot Derrick Anderson, the same way, ballistically, that he shot the 2 Tampa police officers.
That's exactly right, that he used the same weapon to kill this individual that he used to kill the officers. And so that's why they want to go under the exception for introducing this evidence to the jury.
Now, just in general, in using videos in trials, some people will say that the evidence, the video itself, is so strong that it can sway a jury so dramatically that it really isn't fair, because sometimes the visual image may not exactly jive with what happened, and it may create emotion so strong that evidence that is presented, other than the visual evidence, could be forgotten or overweighed in the mind of the jury.
I agree with that. It can be more prejudicial than what we call probative value. And if it is too prejudicial, well, it begins to invoke the sympathy of the jurors, and then they do away with all the other evidentiary factors that should be weighed to make the determination if this defendant is guilty. That's why the defense is working adamantly to keep this evidence out, because video depictions, once we can see it live and happening, I think human nature, we tend to believe that it must be true, because we believe that something that's on camera is that neutral party. It's not someone telling a story, but it's video as it's happening, and then I can come to draw my own conclusions based on what I observe.
Now, I'm going to answer this myself. Obviously, we shouldn't draw any conclusion because of the fact that the prosecution wants to show this video. People will say, hey, you don't need the video. You've got enough other strong evidence to prove that this occurred, that the video is, I mean, you just don't need it.
Well, it just depends on the defense that the other side wants to allege. If he is continuing to take the position that I was not there, and keep in mind, I'm not quite sure what the defense is in this trial, but the prosecution believes that this evidence may be important to rebut those allegations that may come forth from the defendant, because keep in mind, he's not under any obligation to testify in accordance with the Constitution, but depending on the type of defense that they want to present to the jury, this videotape may trump that, and that's why the prosecution find it to be an important key to them bringing home the verdict of guilty.
Now, would this likely set up more likely an appeal if the videotape is used versus if it's not used? And I know we're being very hypothetical here.
Yeah. It does set it up for appeal, and that's why the defense is offering up an argument in opposition for the prosecution's motion, so they can present this to the appellate court in the event that they are unsuccessful with defeating the prosecution's claims. If the defendant is found guilty, this is one of the matters that may go to the Court of Appeals for resolution.
And let me ask you one last thing, and I don't have to hold you to this. What do you think? You think the judge is going to allow it or not? Just your personal opinion.
It's so prejudicial. I think that the judge may not allow it in. And as you pointed out before, there is other evidence upon which the prosecution can rely in order to meet their burden that this individual has committed this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So with that said, and also keep in mind, when courts make decisions, sometimes they're communicating to those to come, and that may not be the precedent they want to set. But the rules allow for it, and there's an opportunity that the judge may go the other way. But in this case, I don't know if the video may come in. All
right. Well, we'll continue to follow this story. Professor Karen Fultz from Cooley Law School, thank you so much for your time. Morris is also serving a life sentence for killing Rodney Jones outside a nightclub. That murder also happened in 2010. Again, Morris charged in 5 murders. We'll keep you updated on the current trial moving through the courts and let you know what the judge decides about that dash cam video.